Question 1. Which of the following is NOT a defense against negligence in a Minnesota property and casualty insurance claim? A. Assumption of risk. B. Comparative negligence. C. Contributory negligence. D. Reinsurance. Correct answer. D. Reinsurance. Explanation. Reinsurance is a method where insurers transfer portions of risk to other insurers and is not relevant to defenses against negligence. The correct defenses include assumption of risk. The injured party knowingly accepted the risk. Comparative negligence. The responsibility for the damages is shared based on the degree of fault of each party. Contributory negligence. In some systems, if the claimant contributed to the damage in any way, they may not recover damages. Question 2. Mr. Jenkins owns a commercial property that suffered damage due to a fire. His policy has a coinsurance clause requiring 80% of the property's replacement value to be insured. The property is valued at $1 million, but Mr. Jenkins only insured it for $600,000. If the fire caused $200,000 in damages, how much will the insurer pay? A. $150,000. B. $200,000. C. $160,000. D. $120,000. Correct answer. A. $150,000. Explanation. The coinsurance clause requires Mr. Jenkins to insure 80% of the replacement value of the property, which is $800,000. Since he only insured it for $600,000, the payout is subject to a penalty. The formula used is Question 3. Which of the following is an example of a moral hazard in property and casualty insurance? A. A homeowner failing to install smoke alarms. B. A policyholder filing multiple claims for fraudulent losses. C. An insured taking extra precautions to avoid theft. D. A tree falling on a house during a storm. Correct answer. B. A policyholder filing multiple claims for fraudulent losses. Explanation. A moral hazard occurs when an insured individual engages in unethical or fraudulent behavior, knowing they have insurance coverage. Filing fraudulent claims represents this behavior. In contrast, failing to install smoke alarms is a physical hazard that increases the risk of loss. Taking extra precautions reduces risk, not increasing it. A tree falling is a peril, not a hazard. Question 4. Which of the following situations would most likely result in the insurer denying a claim under a Minnesota homeowner's insurance policy? A. The insured misrepresented the value of their property during the application process. B. The insured failed to update their policy after renovating their home. C. The insured filed a claim for damage caused by a named peril. D. The insured notified the insurer of a loss 2 days after it occurred. Correct answer. A. The insured misrepresented the value of their property during the application process. Explanation. In Minnesota, misrepresentation or fraud during the application process can lead to claim denial. Insurers rely on accurate information to assess risk and issue policies. If material facts are misrepresented, the insurer may rescind the policy or deny claims. Filing for a named peril or notifying the insurer within a reasonable time, such as 2 days, are acceptable practices and do not typically lead to denial. Failing to update the policy after renovations might affect coverage amounts but wouldn't necessarily lead to outright denial. Question 5. Under a Minnesota Commercial General Liability (CGL) policy, which of the following would be covered under coverage? Bodily injury and property damage liability. A. Injury to an employee during work. B. Damage to a customer's property during repair work. C. Injury caused by the insured's auto on public roads. D. Bodily injury caused by the insured to themselves on their premises. Correct answer. B. Damage to customer's property during repair work. Explanation. Coverage or CGL policy covers bodily injury and property damage that the insured is legally liable for. Damage to a customer's property while performing work would fall under this category. Injuries to employees are typically covered by workers' compensation, and injuries involving autos are covered by a separate commercial auto policy. Self-inflicted injuries are not covered under a CGL policy. Minnesota's commercial general liability policies exclude coverage for auto-related incidents, which require separate coverage, and employee injuries, covered by workers' compensation. Question 6. In a Minnesota property insurance policy, which of the following is an example of a peril that would be covered under a basic cause of loss form? A. Earthquake. B. Vandalism. C. Flood. D. Nuclear hazard. Correct answer. B. Vandalism. Explanation. A basic cause of loss form typically covers perils such as fire, lightning, and vandalism. It does not cover natural disasters like earthquakes or floods, which require specific additional coverage. Nuclear hazards are also excluded under standard property insurance policies. In Minnesota, if an insured wishes to protect against flood or earthquake damage, they must purchase separate endorsements or policies under the National Flood Insurance Program, NFIP, or similar plans. Question 7. Mr. Swanson operates a small trucking business in Minnesota. He has a commercial auto policy, which includes liability coverage but not physical damage coverage. One of his trucks is damaged in a collision that was his driver's fault. What will the policy cover? A. The cost to repair the truck. B. The cost of medical expenses for Mr. Swanson's driver. C. The cost of damages to the other vehicle involved in a collision. D. Loss of income due to the truck being out of service. Correct answer. C. The cost of damages to the other vehicle involved in the collision. Explanation. Liability coverage in a commercial auto policy covers bodily injury and property damage the insured is legally responsible for. In this case, since Mr. Swanson's truck caused damage to another vehicle, the policy will cover those damages. However, it will not cover repairs to Mr. Swanson's own truck since physical damage coverage was not purchased medical expenses for his own driver. This would be covered under workers' compensation or loss of income due to the truck being out of service. Question 8. Which of the following would constitute insurable interest in property insurance in Minnesota? A. A tenant in a rental apartment insuring the building. B. A homeowner insuring their neighbor's property. C. A contractor insuring tools they own and use for work. D. A business insuring personal property belonging to an employee. Correct answer. C. A contractor insuring tools they own and use for work. Explanation. Insurable interest exists when the insured stands to suffer a financial loss if the insured property is damaged or destroyed. A contractor owns and uses their tools for work, so they have an insurable interest in them. A tenant does not have an insurable interest in the building they rent, and a homeowner cannot insure their neighbor's property. While a business may have an interest in some property belonging to an employee, that typically requires special coverage like a bailee policy. Minnesota law requires insurable interest at the time of loss for a valid claim. Question 9. Under Minnesota's minimum auto insurance liability requirements, which of the following coverages must a driver carry a collision? B. Personal injury protection PIP. C. Comprehensive. D. Physical damage. Correct answer. B. Personal injury protection PIP. Explanation. Minnesota is a no-fault insurance state, meaning all drivers must carry personal injury protection PIP, which covers medical expenses and lost wages regardless of who is at fault in an accident. Collision and comprehensive coverage, which protect against damage to your vehicle, are optional. Physical damage coverage refers to optional protection for your own vehicle. Minnesota's minimum liability requirements also include bodily injury and property damage liability, but PIP is mandatory to meet the state's no-fault regulations. Question 10. Which of the following is NOT typically a duty of the insured after a loss under a Minnesota property insurance policy? A. Protect the property from further damage. B. Notify the police if the loss involves a crime. C. Abandon the damaged property to the insurer. D. Submit a proof of loss form. Correct answer. C. Abandon the damaged property to the insurer. Explanation. Under a Minnesota property insurance policy, an insured cannot abandon their property to the insurer. Instead, they are required to protect the property from further damage and cooperate with the insurer's investigation. Duties also include notifying the police if the loss is related to a crime like theft or vandalism, and submitting a proof of loss form to document the damages. Abandonment is explicitly excluded as it transfers an unreasonable burden to the insurer, which is not permitted under standard policy provisions. Question 11. In Minnesota, what is the primary purpose of the personal injury protection PIP coverage in an auto insurance policy? A. To cover damage to another person's vehicle. B. To pay for medical expenses and lost wages of the insured. C. To provide coverage for theft of the vehicle. D. To cover legal fees associated with lawsuits. Correct answer. B. To pay for medical expenses and lost wages of the insured. Explanation. Personal injury protection (PIP) coverage is designed to cover medical expenses and lost wages for the insured and passengers in the event of an auto accident, regardless of who is at fault. It is a key component of Minnesota's no-fault insurance system. While PIP may indirectly relate to legal fees, it does not cover damage to another person's vehicle or theft, which are covered under different parts of the auto insurance policy. Question 12. Which of the following best describes a named peril policy in Minnesota property insurance? A. A policy that covers all risks except those specifically excluded. B. A policy that covers only the perils listed in the policy. C. A policy that covers the insured for any type of loss. D. A policy that covers only natural disasters. Correct answer. B. A policy that covers only the perils listed in the policy. Explanation. A named peril policy provides coverage only for the specific perils explicitly listed in the policy. This contrasts with an all risk of open peril policy, which covers all risks unless they are specifically excluded. In Minnesota, policyholders should understand the distinction to ensure they have the appropriate coverage for their needs. Question 13. Under Minnesota law, what is the minimum liability coverage required for bodily injury per person in an auto insurance policy? A. $25,000. B. $50,000. C. $100,000. D. $300,000. Correct answer. B. $50,000. Explanation. Minnesota requires a minimum of $50,000 in bodily injury liability coverage per person. This is part of the state's mandate to ensure drivers have sufficient financial resources to cover potential injuries they may cause in an accident. While additional coverage may be beneficial, this is the statutory minimum set by Minnesota law. Question 14. If a homeowner in Minnesota wants to insure coverage for flood damage, what should they do? A. Purchase a standard homeowner's insurance policy. B. Obtain a separate flood insurance policy through the NFIP. C. Add flood coverage to their existing policy. D. Wait until flooding occurs and file a claim. Correct answer. B. Obtain a separate flood insurance policy through the NFIP. Explanation. Standard homeowners insurance policies typically do not cover flood damage. To protect against flood risk, homeowners in Minnesota must obtain a separate flood insurance policy through the National Flood Insurance Program, NFIP. This specialized coverage is essential for homeowners located in flood-prone areas. Question 15. What type of policy would a Minnesota farmer likely purchase to cover damage to crops? A. Homeowner's insurance. B. Crop insurance. C. Commercial property insurance. D. General liability insurance. Correct answer. B. Crop insurance. Explanation. Crop insurance is specifically designed to cover farmers against losses due to various risks such as natural disasters, drought, or market fluctuations. Homeowners insurance does not cover agricultural losses, and while commercial property insurance may cover buildings and equipment, it is not tailored to crop losses. General liability insurance protects against third-party claims but does not cover crop damage. Question 16. In Minnesota, which of the following actions must an insured take after experiencing a loss covered by their insurance policy? They dispose of any damaged property before the insurer inspects it. B. Immediately notify the insurer of the loss. C. Wait until the claim is processed before taking any action. D. Repair the damage without notifying the insurer. Correct answer. B. Immediately notify the insurer of the loss. Explanation. After a loss occurs, the insured is required to promptly notify their insurer to start the claims process. This allows the insurer to investigate and assess the damage. Disposing of damaged property or making repairs without the insurer's knowledge could jeopardize the claim. Timely notification is crucial for effective claims management in Minnesota. Question 17. Which of the following best describes an exclusion in an insurance policy? A. Coverage that is automatically included in the policy. B. Conditions under which the insurer may deny a claim. C. Additional coverage options that can be added to a policy. D. The amount the insured must pay before coverage kicks in. Correct answer. B. Conditions under which the insurer may deny a claim. Explanation. Exclusions are specific conditions or circumstances outlined in an insurance policy that limit or eliminate coverage. They specify situations in which the insurer will not pay a claim. Understanding exclusions is vital for policyholders in Minnesota to know what is not covered by their insurance policy. Question 18. In Minnesota, what is the primary purpose of a surety bond in a business context? A. To provide coverage for employee theft. B. To guarantee the performance of the contractual obligation. C. To cover property damage caused by business operations. D. To protect against cyber liability. Correct answer. B. To guarantee the performance of a contractual obligation. Explanation. A surety bond is a contractual agreement in which one party guarantees the performance or fulfillment of a specific obligation to another party. In Minnesota, businesses often use surety bonds to ensure compliance with contracts, regulations, or legal obligations. This type of bond does not cover theft, property damage, or cyber liability, which would require different forms of insurance. Question 19. Which of the following would typically be excluded from coverage under a standard homeowner's insurance policy in Minnesota? A. Damage caused by fire. B. Theft of personal property. C. Damage from an earthquake. D. Liability for injuries on the property. Correct answer. C. Damage from an earthquake. Explanation. Standard homeowners insurance policies generally exclude coverage for damage caused by earthquakes. Homeowners in Minnesota wishing to protect against earthquake damage must purchase a separate earthquake insurance policy or endorsement. Damage from fire, theft, and liability for injuries on the property are typically covered under standard homeowners policies. Question 20. In Minnesota, how often must an insurance agent renew their license? A. Every year. B. Every 2 years. C. Every 3 years. D. Every 5 years. Correct answer. B. Every 2 years. Explanation. In Minnesota, insurance agents must renew their licenses every 2 years. This ensures that agents stay current with industry practices, regulations, and continuing education requirements. Failure to renew on time may result in penalties or the inability to practice as an agent. Question 21. What is the primary role of the Minnesota Department of Commerce regarding insurance? A. To provide insurance policies directly to consumers. B. To regulate and oversee insurance companies operating in the state. C. To set insurance premiums for all policies. D. To offer legal advice to policyholders. Correct answer. B. To regulate and oversee insurance companies operating in the state. Explanation. The Minnesota Department of Commerce is responsible for regulating and overseeing insurance companies in the state. This includes licensing insurers, monitoring their financial stability, and ensuring compliance with state laws. They do not provide insurance directly or set premiums, nor do they offer legal advice to policyholders. Question 22. Which of the following is a primary benefit of having an umbrella insurance policy in Minnesota? A. Coverage for additional living expenses after loss. B. Increased liability protection beyond standard policy limits. C. Coverage for all types of property damage. D. Automatic coverage for all personal belongings. Correct answer. B. Increased liability protection beyond standard policy limits. Explanation. Umbrella insurance provides additional liability coverage that extends beyond the limits of standard homeowners, auto, or other liability policies. It is designed to protect against major claims and lawsuits, offering a higher level of financial security for policyholders in Minnesota. It does not cover all property damage or personal belongings, nor does it provide additional living expenses. Question 23. In Minnesota, which type of coverage would be necessary for a landlord to protect their property from tenant-related damages? A. Renter's insurance. B. Landlord insurance. C. Homeowner's insurance. D. Liability insurance. Correct answer. B. Landlord insurance. Explanation. Landlord insurance is specifically designed to cover rental properties, protecting against damages caused by tenants as well as liability claims related to the rental property, Renter's insurance protects the tenant's personal belongings, while homeowner's insurance is not suitable for properties that are not owner-occupied. Liability insurance may cover certain aspects but does not provide comprehensive protection for the property itself. Question 24. Which of the following situations would likely be covered by standard business liability insurance in Minnesota? A. Damage to a customer's property while on the business premises. B. Loss of income due to a natural disaster. C. Damage caused by an employee's intentional misconduct. D. Theft of inventory from a storage facility. Correct answer. A. Damage to a customer's property while on the business premises. Explanation. Standard business liability insurance typically covers third-party claims for bodily injury or property damage occurring on the business premises. It does not cover loss of income due to natural disasters, intentional misconduct by employees, or theft of inventory, which would require separate types of coverage. Question 25. What type of insurance is typically required for drivers in Minnesota to cover injuries to others in an accident? A. Collision coverage. B. Comprehensive coverage. C. Bodily injury liability coverage. D. Personal injury protection, PIP. Correct answer. C. Bodily injury liability coverage. Explanation. Bodily injury liability coverage is required by Minnesota law for drivers to cover injuries inflicted on others in an auto accident. This type of coverage pays for medical expenses, lost wages, and other costs incurred by the injured party. Collision coverage relates to damage to the insured's vehicle, while comprehensive coverage protects against non-collision incidents, and PIP covers medical expenses for the insured. Question 26. What is the purpose of gap insurance for vehicle financing in Minnesota? A. To cover damage to the vehicle. B. To pay off the remaining loan balance if the vehicle is totaled. C. To provide additional liability coverage. D. To insure personal belongings in the vehicle. Correct answer. B. To pay off the remaining loan balance if the vehicle is totaled. Explanation. Gap insurance is designed to cover the difference, or gap, between the actual cash value of a vehicle at the time of a total loss and the outstanding balance of the loan or lease. This ensures that the borrower is not financially responsible for a deficit after the vehicle is deemed a total loss. It does not cover damage, liability, or personal belongings. Question 27. Under Minnesota law, what is the purpose of the Minnesota Insurance Guarantee Association, MEGA? A. To provide insurance to high-risk individuals. B. To reimburse policyholders when their insurer becomes insolvent. C. To regulate insurance premiums. D. To provide legal representation in insurance disputes. Correct answer. B. To reimburse policyholders when their insurer becomes insolvent. Explanation. The Minnesota Insurance Guarantee Association, MEGA, protects policyholders by covering claims and benefits when an insurance company becomes insolvent. It ensures that individuals and businesses are not left without coverage due to the failure of their insurer. MIGA does not regulate premiums or provide legal representation. Question 28. In Minnesota, how long does an individual typically have to report a claim to their insurance company after an incident occurs? 24 hours. B. 30 days. C. 60 days. D. As soon as possible, but no specific time limit. Correct answer. D. As soon as possible, but no specific time limit. Explanation. While Minnesota law does not specify an exact time frame for reporting a claim, policyholders are generally advised to notify their insurance company as soon as possible after an incident occurs. Timely reporting is crucial for effective claims processing, and delays may complicate or jeopardize the claim. Question 29. Which of the following is true regarding the replacement cost coverage in a homeowner's insurance policy in Minnesota? A. It pays only the actual cash value of the property at the time of a loss. B. It reimburses the insured for the cost to repair or replace damaged property without depreciation. C. It covers losses related to personal belongings outside the home. D. It automatically includes coverage for personal liability. Correct answer. B. It reimburses the insured for the cost to repair or replace damaged property without depreciation. Explanation. Replacement cost coverage pays for the full cost of repairing or replacing damaged property without factoring in depreciation. This type of coverage is valuable for homeowners in Minnesota, ensuring they can fully restore their property after a loss. It does not cover personal belongings outside the home or automatically include liability coverage. Question 30. In Minnesota, what is typically excluded from coverage in a standard homeowner's insurance policy? A. Fire damage. B. Damage caused by a sewer backup. C. Theft of personal belongings. D. Liability for accidents on the property. Correct answer. B. Damage caused by a sewer backup. Explanation. Standard homeowners insurance policies usually exclude coverage for damage caused by sewer backups. Homeowners seeking this protection must typically purchase additional sewer backup coverage or a separate endorsement. Fire damage, theft, and liability for accidents on the property are generally included in a standard homeowner's policy. Question 31. What is the primary function of the National Association of Insurance Commissioners, NAI? A. To set insurance rates for all states. B. To assist state regulators in coordinating insurance regulations. C. To provide insurance directly to consumers. D. To regulate insurance companies at the federal level. Correct answer. B. To assist state regulators in coordinating insurance regulations. Explanation. The National Association of Insurance Commissioners, NAIC, is an organization that helps state insurance regulators coordinate policies and regulations across the U.S. It does not set insurance rates, provide insurance to consumers, or regulate companies at the federal level, as insurance regulation is primarily a state responsibility. Question 32. In Minnesota, which of the following is typically covered by a standard auto insurance policy? A. Personal belongings stolen from the vehicle. B. Medical expenses for injuries to passengers in your vehicle. C. Damage to another driver's vehicle if you are at fault. D. All of the above. Correct answer. D. All of the above. Explanation. A standard auto insurance policy in Minnesota typically includes liability coverage for damage to another driver's vehicle if you are at fault, medical payments for injuries to passengers in your vehicle, and sometimes coverage for personal belongings. However, coverage for stolen personal belongings may require additional endorsements. Question 33. What type of insurance is designed to cover the medical expenses of employees injured on the job in Minnesota? A. Health insurance. B. Workers' compensation insurance. C. Disability insurance. D. General liability insurance. Correct answer. B. Workers' compensation insurance. Explanation. Workers' compensation insurance is specifically designed to cover medical expenses and lost wages for employees injured while on the job. This insurance provides benefits regardless of fault, ensuring that workers receive necessary care and compensation for work-related injuries. Health insurance and disability insurance do not specifically cover job-related injuries, while general liability insurance covers third-party claims. Question 34. Which of the following factors can affect the premium rates for homeowners insurance in Minnesota? A. The age of the home. B. The location of the property. C. The credit score of the homeowner. D. All of the above. Correct answer. D. All of the above. Explanation. Homeowners insurance premium rates can be influenced by various factors, including the age of the home, its location, which can affect risks like flooding or fire, and the homeowner's credit score. Insurers consider these elements to assess risk and determine premium amounts. Question 35. In Minnesota, which of the following is true about the coverage for mold damage in a homeowner's insurance policy? A. Mold damage is always fully covered. B. Mold damage is excluded unless it results from a covered peril. C. Mold damage is only covered if the homeowner can prove it was caused by negligence. D. Mold damage is automatically covered under all policies. Correct answer. B. Mold damage is excluded unless it results from a covered peril. Explanation. In Minnesota, mold damage is typically excluded from homeowners insurance policies unless it is the result of a covered peril, such as water damage from a burst pipe. Homeowners may need to purchase additional coverage or endorsements to protect against mold damage directly. Question 36. What does underinsurance mean in the context of property insurance in Minnesota? A. Having insurance coverage that exceeds the value of the property. B. Having insufficient coverage to fully repair or replace the property after a loss. C. Not having any insurance coverage at all. D. Having coverage that includes additional living expenses. Correct answer. B. Having insufficient coverage to fully repair or replace the property after a loss. Explanation. Underinsurance refers to a situation where a property owner has insufficient insurance coverage to fully cover the costs of repairing or replacing their property after a loss. This can lead to significant out-of-pocket expenses for the policyholder. It does not refer to excess coverage, lack of insurance, or specific coverage for additional living expenses. Question 37. What is the typical waiting period for coverage to begin under a long-term disability insurance policy in Minnesota? A. 1 day. B. 30 days. C. 60 days. D. It varies by policy. Correct answer. D. It varies by policy. Explanation. The waiting period, also known as the elimination period, for long-term disability insurance can vary significantly depending on the specific policy. Some policies may have waiting periods as short as a few days, while others may require a longer period, such as 30 or 60 days. Policyholders should review their individual contracts for details. Question 38. In Minnesota, what is the legal minimum liability coverage required for auto insurance? A. $25,000 per person and $50,000 per accident for bodily injury, and $10,000 for property damage. B. $50,000 per person and $100,000 per accident for bodily injury, and $25,000 for property damage. C. $10,000 per person for bodily injury only. D. No minimum coverage is required. Correct answer. A. $25,000 per person and $50,000 per accident for bodily injury, and $10,000 for property damage. Explanation. Minnesota law requires drivers to carry a minimum liability coverage of $25,000 per person and $50,000 per accident for bodily injury, along with $10,000 for property damage. This ensures that drivers can cover damages they cause to others in the event of an accident. Question 39. What is coinsurance in the context of property insurance in Minnesota? A. A type of insurance that covers multiple properties. B. A requirement that the insured maintain a minimum amount of coverage relative to the property's value. C. A policy that covers coins in a collection. D. An option for reducing premium costs. Correct answer. B. A requirement that the insured maintain a minimum amount of coverage relative to the property's value. Explanation. Coinsurance in property insurance refers to a provision that requires the insured to maintain coverage equal to a certain percentage, often 80% or more, of the property's value. If the property is underinsured at the time of a loss, the insurance payout may be reduced. It does not pertain to covering multiple properties, coins and collections, or premium reductions. Question 40. What is typically the primary purpose of an insurance endorsement in Minnesota? A. To decrease the premium of the policy. B. To exclude certain types of coverage. C. To modify the terms of the original insurance policy. D. To automatically renew the policy. Correct answer. C. To modify the terms of the original insurance policy. Explanation. An insurance endorsement is an addition or change to the original insurance policy that modifies its terms, coverage, or limits. Endorsements can expand or restrict coverage and are commonly used to tailor policies to meet specific needs. They do not inherently decrease premiums, exclude coverage, or automatically renew policies. Question 41. In Minnesota, what is the primary purpose of the no-fault insurance law? A. To provide coverage for property damage only. B. To ensure that medical expenses and lost wages are covered regardless of fault in an accident. C. To eliminate all liability claims. D. To require drivers to have comprehensive coverage. Correct answer. B. To ensure that medical expenses and lost wages are covered regardless of fault in an accident. Explanation. The no-fault insurance law in Minnesota allows for medical expenses and lost wages to be covered regardless of who is at fault in a car accident. This system aims to reduce litigation and ensure quick access to benefits for injured parties. Question 42. Which of the following types of insurance would typically cover damage to a rental car while you are traveling in Minnesota? A. Homeowner's insurance. B. Auto liability insurance. C. Personal auto insurance with comprehensive coverage. D. Renter's insurance. Correct answer. C. Personal auto insurance with comprehensive coverage. Explanation. Personal auto insurance that includes comprehensive coverage may extend to cover damage to a rental car. Homeowners insurance and renter's insurance generally do not cover vehicles, while auto liability insurance covers damages to others, not to rental vehicles. Question 43. In Minnesota, which of the following is a common exclusion in a standard homeowner's insurance policy? A. Fire damage. B. Theft. C. Flood damage. D. Windstorm damage. Correct answer. C. Flood damage. Explanation. Flood damage is commonly excluded from standard homeowners insurance policies in Minnesota, requiring homeowners to purchase separate flood insurance to cover such risks. Fire, theft, and windstorm damage are typically covered under standard policies. Question 44. Which type of insurance is specifically designed to cover the costs of legal defense for professional malpractice claims in Minnesota? A. General liability insurance. B. Errors and omissions insurance. C. Workers' compensation insurance. D. Commercial property insurance. Correct answer. B. Errors and omissions insurance. Explanation. Errors and omissions insurance, EO insurance, is specifically tailored to protect professionals such as doctors and lawyers against claims of negligence or malpractice. General liability insurance does not cover professional services, while workers' compensation and commercial property insurance address other types of risks. Question 45. What is the primary purpose of umbrella insurance in Minnesota? A. To provide basic auto coverage. B. To increase the limits of existing liability coverage. C. To cover property damage. D. To provide insurance for high-value items only. Correct answer. B. To increase the limits of existing liability coverage. Explanation. Umbrella insurance is designed to provide additional liability coverage beyond the limits of existing policies, such as homeowners or auto insurance. It helps protect against large claims or lawsuits that could exceed the primary policy limits. Question 46. In Minnesota, which type of insurance would cover injuries sustained by a visitor slipping on ice in your driveway? A. Health insurance. B. Liability insurance. C. Home warranty insurance. D. Property insurance. Correct answer. B. Liability insurance. Explanation. Liability insurance in a homeowner's policy would cover injuries to visitors such as those resulting from slipping on ice in the driveway. Health insurance does not cover liability claims, and home warranty insurance typically covers repairs to home systems and appliances, not liability issues. Question 47. Which of the following is typically included in a standard business owner's policy, BOP, in Minnesota? A. Professional liability coverage. B. Business interruption insurance. C. Flood insurance. D. Auto insurance. Correct answer. B. Business interruption insurance. Explanation. A standard business owner's policy, BOP, typically includes business interruption insurance, which covers loss of income due to a covered event that disrupts operations. Professional liability coverage, flood insurance, and auto insurance usually require separate policies or endorsements. Question 48. What is a common requirement for obtaining a life insurance policy in Minnesota? A. Proof of income. B. A medical examination. C. A background check. D. Enrollment in a health plan. Correct answer. B. A medical examination. Explanation. Many life insurance policies in Minnesota may require a medical examination to assess the applicant's health and determine risk. While proof of income may be requested for certain products, it is not a universal requirement. Background checks and health plan enrollments are generally not standard requirements for obtaining life insurance. Question 49. In Minnesota, which of the following can be a consequence of failing to maintain the minimum required auto insurance? A. You will receive a discount on your premium. B. You may face fines or penalties from the state. C. Your vehicle will be automatically covered under a state program. D. You can still drive without any repercussions. Correct answer. B. You may face fines or penalties from the state. Explanation. Failing to maintain the minimum required auto insurance in Minnesota can result in fines and penalties from the state. Drivers may also risk having their licenses suspended or face other legal repercussions, whereas they would not receive discounts for being uninsured. Question 50. Which coverage protects homeowners in Minnesota from liability for injuries that occur on their property? A. Dwelling coverage. B. Personal property coverage. C. Personal liability coverage. D. Replacement cost coverage. Correct answer. C. Personal liability coverage. Explanation. Personal liability coverage protects homeowners against claims for injuries or damages that occur on their property. Dwelling coverage protects the structure of the home. Personal property coverage protects personal belongings. And replacement cost coverage pertains to how claims are settled regarding damaged or lost property. Question 51. In Minnesota, what is the purpose of the Minnesota Comprehensive Insurance Plan, MCIP? To provide low-income residents with subsidized insurance. B. To offer insurance options for high-risk drivers who are unable to obtain coverage in the standard market. C. To regulate the rates of auto insurance. D. To provide health insurance for the uninsured. Correct answer. B. To offer insurance options for high-risk drivers who are unable to obtain coverage in the standard market. Explanation. The Minnesota Comprehensive Insurance Plan, MCIP, is designed to provide auto insurance coverage options for high-risk drivers who have difficulty obtaining insurance through the standard market. It aims to ensure that these individuals can still get the necessary coverage. Question 52. Which of the following is a requirement for all homeowners insurance policies in Minnesota? A. Coverage for earthquake damage. B. Coverage for theft. C. Coverage for personal property. D. Coverage for flood damage. Correct answer. C. Coverage for personal property. Explanation. Most homeowners insurance policies in Minnesota include coverage for personal property, which protects the homeowner's belongings from risks like theft or damage. However, coverage for earthquake or flood damage typically requires separate policies or endorsements. Question 53. In Minnesota, what type of insurance would a small business owner need to protect against claims of negligence related to their professional services? A. General liability insurance. B. Workers' compensation insurance. C. Professional liability insurance. D. Property insurance. Correct answer. C. Professional liability insurance. Explanation. Professional liability insurance, also known as errors and omissions insurance, protects business owners against claims of negligence or inadequate work related to their professional services. General liability covers other types of risks, while property insurance covers physical assets. Question 54. What is the primary purpose of workers' compensation insurance in Minnesota? A. To cover damages to company property. B. To provide medical benefits and wage replacement to employees injured on the job. C. To protect against lawsuits from customers. D. To offer health insurance to employees. Correct answer. B. To provide medical benefits and wage replacement to employees injured on the job. Explanation. Workers' compensation insurance is designed to provide medical benefits and wage replacement to employees who are injured or become ill due to their job. It is a critical component of workplace safety and employee protection. Question 55. Which of the following best describes the term underinsurance in the context of auto insurance in Minnesota? A. Carrying too much insurance compared to the vehicle's value. B. Not having any insurance at all. C. Having insurance coverage that is insufficient to cover damages after an accident. D. Having a policy that only covers bodily injury. Correct answer. C. Having insurance coverage that is insufficient to cover damages after an accident. Explanation. Underinsurance occurs when an insured individual has coverage that does not adequately cover the costs of damages or injuries sustained in an accident. This can leave the insured responsible for the remaining costs, which could be significant. Question 56. In Minnesota, which of the following is considered a mandatory coverage in auto insurance policies? A. Collision coverage. B. Personal injury protection, PIP. C. Comprehensive coverage. D. Uninsured underinsured motorist coverage. Correct answer. B. Personal injury protection, PIP. Explanation. In Minnesota, personal injury protection, PIP, is a mandatory coverage that provides benefits for medical expenses and lost wages regardless of fault in an accident. Other coverages like collision and comprehensive are optional. Question 57. What is the main benefit of having a long-term care insurance policy in Minnesota? A. It covers all medical expenses for seniors. B. It provides coverage for in-home or assisted living care services. C. It protects against property loss due to theft. D. It offers burial and funeral expense coverage. Correct answer. B. It provides coverage for in-home or assisted living care services. Explanation. Long-term care insurance is designed to cover services like in-home care, assisted living, and nursing home care for individuals who may require assistance due to aging, illness, or disability. It does not typically cover all medical expenses or provide burial coverage. Question 58. Which of the following is NOT typically covered under a standard auto insurance policy in Minnesota? A. Damage to another person's property. B. Medical expenses for the insured driver. C. Theft of the insured vehicle. D. Wear and tear on the insured vehicle. Correct answer. D. Wear and tear on the insured vehicle. Explanation. Standard auto insurance policies do not cover wear and tear on vehicles, as they typically only cover damages resulting from accidents, theft, or vandalism. Maintenance issues and general deterioration are the owner's responsibility. Question 59. In Minnesota, which type of insurance would typically cover damages to a home caused by a severe storm? A. Renter's insurance. B. Homeowner's insurance. C. Liability insurance. D. Flood insurance. Correct answer. B. Homeowner's insurance. Explanation. Homeowner's insurance generally covers damages to a home from perils like severe storms, including wind and hail. However, specific damages, such as those caused by flooding, may require separate flood insurance. Question 60. What is the typical waiting period for coverage to begin under a disability insurance policy in Minnesota? A. 1 day. B. 7 days. C. 30 days. D. It varies by policy. Correct answer. D. It varies by policy. Explanation. The waiting period for disability insurance coverage can vary significantly by policy, with options ranging from a few days to several months. This period is the time the insured must wait before benefits are payable after becoming disabled. Question 61. In Minnesota, which of the following is considered an illegal practice for an insurance producer? A. Offering additional coverage to a client for free. B. Rebidding a portion of the premium to the client. C. Advertising discounts for bundled policies. D. Offering consultation services. Correct answer. B. Rebidding a portion of the premium to the client. Explanation. Rebidding or returning a portion of the premium or any other inducement to the insured as an incentive to buy insurance is illegal in Minnesota. This practice is regulated to ensure fairness and avoid unethical competition among insurance producers. Question 62. Which of the following statements about no-fault auto insurance in Minnesota is true? A. It eliminates the need for liability coverage. B. It requires each driver to cover their own damages regardless of fault. C. It only applies to uninsured drivers. D. It covers only property damage. Correct answer. B. It requires each driver to cover their own damages regardless of fault. Explanation. Under Minnesota's no-fault auto insurance system, each driver's insurance covers their own injuries and damages regardless of who is at fault in an accident. However, drivers must still carry liability coverage for certain situations. Question 63. In Minnesota, which of the following would be covered under comprehensive auto insurance? A. Damage from a car accident. B. Theft of the insured vehicle. C. Damage to another person's vehicle in an accident. D. Medical expenses for the insured driver. Correct answer. B. Theft of the insured vehicle. Explanation. Comprehensive auto insurance in Minnesota covers damages or losses to the insured vehicle from non-collision events such as theft, vandalism, or natural disasters. It does not cover collision damages or medical expenses. Question 64. What is the purpose of a personal umbrella policy in Minnesota? A. To cover health care expenses. B. To provide additional liability coverage above the limits of a home or auto policy. C. To cover damage to a second property. D. To protect against natural disasters. Correct answer. B. To provide additional liability coverage above the limits of a home or auto policy. Explanation. A personal umbrella policy offers extra liability coverage beyond the limits of standard auto or homeowners insurance policies, protecting individuals from large lawsuits or claims that could exceed the coverage of their base policies. Question 65. In Minnesota, how often must an insurance producer complete continuing education C to maintain their license? A. Every year. B. Every 2 years. C. Every 3 years. D. Every 5 years. Correct answer. B. Every 2 years. Explanation. Minnesota requires insurance producers to complete continuing education C courses every 2 years to ensure they stay current with laws, regulations, and industry practices. This helps maintain their knowledge and professional qualifications. Question 66. Which type of life insurance policy allows the policyholder to adjust the premiums and death benefit within certain limits? A. Term life insurance. B. Whole life insurance. C. Universal life insurance. D. Variable life insurance. Correct answer. C. Universal life insurance. Explanation. Universal life insurance offers policyholders the flexibility to adjust both the premiums and death benefits within certain limits. It combines features of term and whole life insurance, allowing for more control over the policy. Question 67. What is the minimum liability coverage required for bodily injury per person in Minnesota's auto insurance policies? A. $10,000. B. $20,000. C. $30,000. D. $50,000. Correct answer. C. $30,000. Explanation. Minnesota's minimum required liability coverage for bodily injury per person is $30,000. This ensures that drivers are protected financially in case they cause an accident resulting in injury to others. Question 68. Which of the following is covered under Minnesota's homeowners insurance but typically requires a separate endorsement or policy? A. Fire damage. B. Windstorm damage. C. Earthquake damage. D. Theft. Correct answer. C. Earthquake damage. Explanation. Earthquake damage is typically not covered under standard homeowners insurance policies and requires a separate endorsement or policy. However, fire, windstorm, and theft are generally included in a standard homeowners policy. Question 69. In Minnesota, an insurance policy can be canceled for non-payment of premiums after how many days' notice to the insured? A. 7 days. B. 10 days. C. 15 days. D. 30 days. Correct answer. B. 10 days. Explanation. Minnesota law requires that insurance companies provide at least 10 days' notice to the insured before canceling a policy due to non-payment of premiums. This ensures the policyholder has time to address the issue before the policy lapses. Question 70. Which of the following is required for an insurance company to operate legally in Minnesota? A. A bond from the state governor. B. An admission license from the state's insurance commissioner. C. A certificate of authority. D. A federal license. Correct answer. C. A certificate of authority. Explanation. In Minnesota, an insurance company must obtain a certificate of authority from the state's insurance commissioner to legally operate and sell insurance within the state. This ensures the company meets the required standards and regulations. Question 71. What type of insurance is designed to cover the cost to medical care and rehabilitation for employees who are injured on the job in Minnesota? A. Health insurance. B. Workers' compensation insurance. C. Disability insurance. D. Unemployment insurance. Correct answer. B. Workers' compensation insurance. Explanation. Workers' compensation insurance provides coverage for medical care, rehabilitation, and lost wages for employees who suffer job-related injuries or illnesses. It is mandatory for most employers in Minnesota. Question 72. In Minnesota, what is the maximum duration for which a homeowner's policy can be non-renewed if the insured has not filed any claims? A. 1 year. B. 2 years. C. 3 years. D. 5 years. Correct answer. C. 3 years. Explanation. In Minnesota, a homeowner's insurance policy can be non-renewed by an insurer if the insured has not filed any claims for at least 3 years. This regulation is designed to protect homeowners from unexpected policy cancellations. Question 73. In Minnesota, what is the typical grace period for paying a premium before a life insurance policy lapses? A. 10 days. B. 15 days. C. 30 days. D. 45 days. Correct answer. C. 30 days. Explanation. Life insurance policies in Minnesota generally have a 30-day grace period. This means the insured has 30 days after the premium due date to make the payment before the policy lapses or is canceled. Question 74. Which of the following is not typically covered by a standard Minnesota homeowner's insurance policy? A. Fire damage. B. Flood damage. C. Theft. D. Liability for injuries on the property. Correct answer. B. Flood damage. Explanation. Flood damage is not covered by standard homeowners insurance policies in Minnesota. Homeowners must purchase a separate flood insurance policy, usually through the National Flood Insurance Program, NFIP, for flood-related coverage. Question 75. In Minnesota, what is the minimum liability limit required for property damage in an auto insurance policy? A. $10,000. B. $20,000. C. $30,000. D. $40,000. Correct answer. B. $20,000. Explanation. Minnesota law requires a minimum of $20,000 in property damage liability coverage as part of an auto insurance policy. This covers damages caused to another person's property, such as vehicles or structures, in an accident. Question 76. In Minnesota, under what circumstances can an insurance company cancel a personal auto insurance policy midterm? A. Any reason. B. Non-payment of premiums. C. Too many claims. D. After a driver exceeds the speed limit. Correct answer. B. Non-payment of premiums. Explanation. In Minnesota, personal auto insurance policies can only be canceled midterm for specific reasons, including non-payment of premiums. Other reasons for cancellation typically involve fraud or misrepresentation. Question 77. Which of the following best describes a twisting practice in Minnesota insurance? A. Misstating the benefits of a policy to increase sales. B. Offering gifts in exchange for purchasing insurance. C. Replacing a policy with another policy from a different company to the detriment of the policyholder. D. Encouraging clients to cancel their insurance policies for a cash rebate. Correct answer. C. Replacing a policy with another policy from a different company to the detriment of the policyholder. Explanation. Twisting is the unethical practice of persuading an insured to switch from one policy to another, often from a different insurer, using misleading or false information. This is illegal because it may harm the policyholder by reducing coverage or increasing costs unnecessarily. Question 78. In Minnesota, how long does an individual have to file a property insurance claim after a loss occurs? A. 30 days. B. 60 days. C. 1 year. D. 2 years. Correct answer. C. 1 year. Explanation. Minnesota law typically allows up to 1 year from the date of loss to file a claim under a property insurance policy. This ensures that insured individuals have sufficient time to assess the damage and submit their claim to the insurer. Question 79. Which of the following is a mandatory component of all Minnesota auto insurance policies? A. Uninsured motorist coverage. B. Collision coverage. C. Comprehensive coverage. D. Gap insurance. Correct answer. A. Uninsured motorist coverage. Explanation. Minnesota law requires that all auto insurance policies include uninsured motorist coverage. This protects the insured if they are involved in an accident caused by a driver who does not have insurance or whose insurance is insufficient to cover the damages. Question 80. In Minnesota, which of the following types of policies is required to have a cash surrender value? A. Term life insurance. B. Whole life insurance. C. Accidental death and dismemberment insurance. D. Disability insurance. Correct answer. B. Whole life insurance. Explanation. Whole life insurance policies in Minnesota are required to accumulate a cash surrender value over time, which the policyholder can withdraw or borrow against. Term life insurance does not build up a cash value. Question 81. In Minnesota, which of the following would be considered an example of rebidding in insurance? A. Offering a discount for bundling auto and home policies. B. Giving a client a portion of the agent's commission to induce a sale. C. Providing a lower premium for a safe driving record. D. Offering extended coverage at no extra cost. Correct answer. B. Giving a client a portion of the agent's commission to induce a sale. Explanation. Rebidding is legal in Minnesota and involves an agent giving a client something of value, such as part of the agent's commission, as an incentive to purchase insurance. This practice is prohibited as it may unfairly influence purchasing decisions. Question 82. Which type of auto insurance is required by Minnesota law to cover medical expenses, regardless of fault, following a car accident? A. Bodily injury liability. B. Uninsured motorist coverage. C. Personal injury protection, PIP. D. Comprehensive coverage. Correct answer. C. Personal injury protection, PIP. Explanation. Minnesota requires personal injury protection, PIP coverage, which pays for medical expenses, lost wages, and other related costs regardless of who is at fault in an accident. PIP is part of the state's no-fault insurance system. Question 83. In Minnesota, what is the minimum required coverage for bodily injury per person under a liability auto insurance policy? A. $10,000. B. $30,000. C. $50,000. D. $100,000. Correct answer. B. $30,000. Explanation. Minnesota law mandates that auto insurance policies carry a minimum of $30,000 in bodily injury liability coverage per person involved in an accident. This helps cover medical expenses, lost wages, and other damages for injuries to others when the insured is at fault. Question 84. Which of the following is true regarding flood insurance in Minnesota? A. It is included in standard homeowners insurance policies. B. It is required for all homes near bodies of water. C. It must be purchased separately through the National Flood Insurance Program and FIP. D. It is covered under comprehensive auto insurance. Correct answer. C. It must be purchased separately through the National Flood Insurance Program and FIP. Explanation. Flood insurance is not included in standard homeowners policies and must be purchased separately through the NFIP. Homeowners in flood-prone areas are often required by lenders to have this coverage. Question 85. In Minnesota, an insurer must provide how many days' notice before canceling a homeowner's insurance policy for reasons other than non-payment of premiums? A. 10 days. B. 30 days. C. 45 days. D. 60 days. Correct answer. B. 30 days. Explanation. Minnesota law requires insurers to provide at least 30 days' notice before canceling a homeowner's insurance policy for reasons other than non-payment. This allows the policyholder time to seek alternative coverage or address any issues. Question 86. What is the purpose of the Minnesota FAIR plan? A. To provide insurance for high-risk drivers. B. To offer life insurance to low-income individuals. C. To ensure that individuals in high-risk areas can obtain property insurance. D. To provide health insurance to the uninsured. Correct answer. C. To ensure that individuals in high-risk areas can obtain property insurance. Explanation. The Minnesota FAIR plan, Fair Access to Insurance Requirements, provides access to property insurance for individuals who are unable to obtain it through the standard market, typically because they live in high-risk areas or have properties that are difficult to insure. Question 87. Which of the following would likely be covered under a Minnesota homeowner's insurance policy? A. Damage caused by a flood. B. Damage from a fire. C. Normal wear and tear. D. Intentional damage caused by the homeowner. Correct answer. B. Damage from a fire. Explanation. Homeowners insurance in Minnesota typically covers fire damage, as well as damages from other perils such as windstorms or theft. Flood damage and intentional acts by the homeowner are not covered. Question 88. Which type of insurance is required for all employers in Minnesota with at least one employee? A. Health insurance. B. Workers' compensation insurance. C. Unemployment insurance. D. Life insurance. Correct answer. B. Workers' compensation insurance. Explanation. Minnesota requires all employers with at least one employee to carry workers' compensation insurance. This coverage pays for medical expenses and lost wages if an employee is injured on the job. Question 89. In Minnesota, which of the following would be an example of an unfair claims practice? A. Denying a claim based on an investigation. B. Paying a claim promptly. C. Failing to acknowledge a claim within a reasonable time. D. Providing clear explanations for a claims decision. Correct answer. C. Failing to acknowledge a claim within a reasonable time. Explanation. Under Minnesota law, failing to acknowledge a claim in a timely manner is considered an unfair claims practice. Insurers are required to communicate and process claims fairly and efficiently. Question 90. In Minnesota, what is the maximum duration for which temporary disability benefits can be paid under workers' compensation? A. 12 weeks. B. 104 weeks. C. 52 weeks. D. 156 weeks. Correct answer. B. 104 weeks. Explanation. Temporary disability benefits under Minnesota workers' compensation are generally paid for up to 104 weeks. This provides income replacement while the injured employee recovers and is unable to work.